Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to hop on here and make a video about one of my favorite concepts that I find throughout all of gaming. Whether that's video games, tabletop games, or the first thing that ever made me really realize this concept, a deck of playing cards. And that's the versatility of games despite their initial intended purpose. And so, a much simpler way of saying that is games within games. I mentioned a deck of playing cards. I don't remember how old I was, but I was pretty little, and I remember when I was playing a game of cards with my family, just like sitting there and looking at them and thinking about how cool it is that you have just these 52 little sheets that have some numbers on them, and they mean so many different things. What a good example of human ingenuity and sort of collective ingenuity it is that you can just see these very simple symbols written out on these things and create all these incredibly varying types of games with them, whether it's a thing that takes place with 2 players or 8 and children can play it, or it's more complicated, it's for money or it's for fun, it takes skill or it takes luck. And so I want to sort of explore this concept just a little bit by looking at how people who play video games specifically are able to extrapolate and create their own games through the games they play. And I apologize, I know I'm saying the word game a lot. I think this breaks down into about 4 general subgroups, and that's actual developer-intended games within games, conceptual but semi-developer-intended games within games, speedruns, challenges, and other structured games within games, and lastly, imagination. So when it comes to actual games within games, obviously the sort of general example of that is the idea of a mini game, whether it's, a hidden Easter egg or a way for the player to cool off or a very specific part of the plot. I think, a really interesting way a lot of games do this is through puzzle games. And so the kind of second layer, if you will, is this sort of conceptual, semi-intended type of a game within a game. I feel like you can find that in a number of ways. Like, when I initially started thinking about this, I was playing Last of Us Part 2 a ton. Shocker for anybody that's watched more than one of my videos. I'm a perfectionist, I'm a completionist, I'm a bit of a stickler for trophies. And so while I found myself just being so incredibly obsessed with this game, after a while, the game wasn't the game. The game was collect enough pills and parts to be able to upgrade yourself so that Ellie and Abby can have all the upgrades they need. The game, or you could say the game was get all the trophies. And so that's kind of what I mean by these conceptual games within games. They're sort of always in the back of a player's head, whether it's a side quest or a trophy or, any sort of collectible or upgrade or thing like that that a player can be searching for as they go through the game, which I think is especially true in any sort of open world game. In Fallout, you can be looking for like 40 different types of things at one time, whether it's materials to make your settlements or new relationships, building up your relationship with your companion or leveling up. I think most of the time the sort of fundamental mechanics of a game serve that. And if you're playing a first-person shooter, it's aim and shoot. If you're playing a story-based or a narrative choice-based game, then that mechanic is fundamentally press one of these 2 buttons and make a choice. If it's a platformer, that fundamental mechanic is run and climb and hop. Most of the time, if a game has a story, these mechanics are also there to serve the story and the narrative, whatever that fundamental narrative is. Again, for The Last of Us, it's this, grappling with violence and revenge, as well as dealing with, mob mentality and tribalism. But, here I was playing the Pills and Parts game, or here I was playing the collect trading cards and coins game, which kind of don't have anything to do with the game themselves, but add a little bit to it narratively and thematically. And of course, I think probably the most sort of popular idea of a game within a game that is, community-based or player-based or self-driven is that of sort of player-mandated challenges and speed runs. And so, the thing that my autistic hermit mind immediately thinks of, the insane amount of challenges there are out there for The Sims 4, whether that's build challenges or gameplay challenges, create a sim challenges, varying levels of difficulty. They can use mods or not, varying levels of fucking insanity, which actually, I don't know if it'll be out by the time that I put this video out, but I'm working on something related to a certain insane sim from the YouTube Sims 4 canon. And The Sims 4 is a game that has, a ton of those conceptual, semi-developer intended games within games. But where the community comes in is, sort of giving shape to this very sandboxed world. And we'll talk about that more in the imagination section, but I think especially these, big simulator, sandbox, open world games find themselves garnering such a huge and passionate fan community because they're so easy to, take apart and rework and make your own however you want to. Especially, games that I think are sort of the games in this section, at least for me and the people I'm around, are The Sims 4 and Minecraft. And both of those games, while they have such an aesthetic and tone and, feeling that's unique and of their own, they still are this sort of basic skeleton almost that you can come and put whatever you want on. And obviously, because they're different games that mean different things, then challenges are going to look very different. But it's like whatever story you want to tell, whatever thing you want to do, these games sort of become mediums for that, if that makes sense. And the other thing, that I think is so interesting about gaming that we sort of don't find in any other medium, or not in this way at least. Actually, I'd be interested to hear what people have to say about this. At least I think something that is unique to gaming is the fact that we're able to, look inside the works that we're consuming, pull them apart, break them, and use that to our advantage.
So is it the glitches in the runs that make it fun for you? Absolutely. Unless it's like a really cool game, like where the gameplay's super enjoyable to watch, I'd rather see the exploits. I think that's what makes it interesting.
Glitches and mods, whether you're using a glitch to be able to do a faster speed run, to be able to look out of bounds. I've spent a lot of time trying to get out of bounds or watching out of bounds videos. I love the she says, whatever the fuck it is, channel, and Slipping Out, I think, is the other one I've watched a bunch of. Without a lot of glitches, that wouldn't be possible. And without mods, a lot of other really interesting content that people make on all platforms wouldn't be possible. Whether it's, incredibly articulately rendered, beautiful stuff. And I don't remember what this guy's name is, which is insane because this one Red Dead Redemption 2 video, literally makes me want to cry. I'll make sure to put his name up on the screen. But you can go from that, to just, really stupid mod stuff and memes and whatever the fuck. To stuff in the middle, one of my favorite creators these days is Juve, and I love all of his Fallout and Skyrim challenge videos and the ways that he will sort of create these new storylines sort of in the guise of an actual Fallout quest or a Skyrim quest, and will actually either get other people to make mods for him or make mods himself to be able to sort of bring this alternate reality of the game to life.
As always on my channel, it's much more experiment than it is challenge. What all can we get done? What weird experiences may we have? What unique solutions can we find to the problems this new rule set may impose upon us?
And that just sort of brings me to a larger general point of all of this, which is sort of like the conceptual game of modification. And so obviously, as I said before, I think that happens the most, or is sort of the most accessible in gaming in a way. You know, we obviously have remixes and sampling and covers in music, you know, people who make fan-made music videos, people who recut films, you know, like the Bateman Batman cut of Dark Knight and American Psycho is a very iconic fan cut thing. Or even, you know, in this sort of sense of completely breaking something down and reworking it, like the ways that art historians have been able to like fucking use x-rays and shit to find out that there are all these paintings under Da Vinci paintings or paintings under Rembrandts or Vermeers or whatever. But I feel like generally with all these other mediums, that's seen as a skilled maneuver, as a professional that not everybody is able to do. And obviously that's also true in gaming. Like, I can't go and, you know, do a fucking Mario 64 speed run or whatever. I've never played the fucking game. And even if I had, I wouldn't know where to start with finding glitches and, you know, going into the code and whatever that can require not just skill in, you know, gaming itself, but in programming as well. But I just feel like this idea of being able to transform the games that you're playing, especially if you're sort of doing these fan-made challenges that don't require you to do any of that brunt force work, whether that's, you know, coding or hacking or whatever, that sort of allows you to be even more of an active participant in the work that you're consuming, even more than you already were as a person playing the game. And so this brings me to my final point, which in a way is incredibly kitschy, but also kind of isn't. And that's this idea of imagination. And basically what I mean by this is just the fact that, like, you know, obviously role-playing games kind of inherently come with this, but no matter what you're playing, I think in a way, again, more than engaging with any other medium, the player is able to imagine whatever they want and whatever scenario they're in. And the fact that you're able to control your environment or yourself in that environment at least a little more than you would be able to, you know, while empathizing with a character while watching a movie, you know, again, sort of points to this like fundamental autonomy that I'm trying to get at. And so for me, at least, the time that I remember doing this the most was obviously in childhood. And, you know, whether that was creating these incredibly elaborate stories around the characters in not my Sims game, but my Sims game, which I still play to this day. It's so comforting, and I'm really sad that they haven't made another one, or that the Sims community is like caught onto it, because it's so cute and it's so fun to build and whatever. I should make a video about that at some point. I just remember, you know, being 7 or 8 and just completely delving into this world. And I mean, all the characters after a while, they have like a line of text that they say to you each level you get. And so once I got level 5, they keep saying the same thing over and over. So obviously I'm imagining new things that they're saying. I'm imagining what their relationships are really like. I'm imagining what's past out of bounds, you know. I'm imagining what my character feels and what things look like while the loading screens are going on, you know, and being able to sort of craft this extra world not only through the game but through my head. And I even remember, you know, feeling that way with really simple Flash games and like creating these very elaborate storylines for, like, you know, a fucking Dora dress-up game or some shit like that. And I still do this, whether or not it's, you know, my Fallout character or my Minecraft character. And I would assume that most, if not everyone that plays games consistently is doing the same thing. And I find that, you know, after a while, that becomes a game in and of itself. How do I take this thing that I'm running in, shooting in, climbing in, solving a puzzle in, whatever, and make it my own and make it make sense to me and make it meaningful wherever I am at whatever time, you know. And I don't think a lot of people are sort of aware of this while they're doing it, but I would assume a lot of people are doing it. And as I said before, you know, I think something like a role-playing game is obviously fostering that imagination, and sort of the point of a lot of role-playing games is to foster that imagination. But they might not be doing the same thing in top-down side-scrolling shooter, but after you look at some guy with a gun for 3 hours, you might have created this whole backstory for him. And so fundamentally, the whole reason I wanted to make this video is just to say, like, that's really cool. You know, I think humans are really cool, the way that we tell stories and find patterns and come together to create new things. And I love the way that art is this, like, timeless fucking circle of love and passion and influence and imagination. And I think it's really cool the ways that developers try to engage with that, and the way that content creators engage with that, and the way that players engage with that. So yeah, this ended up being a little bit longer than I meant for it to be, but I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think in the comments. You know, what are your favorite games within games? Who are your favorite creators that make games within games? You know, I've tried to shout out a lot of the people that I spend a lot of time watching, and I'll leave links to all of those channels in the description. But yeah, I would just sort of love to hear your stories, your comments about, you know, sort of storytelling and making new things out of the games you love. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're into content like this, me just sort of waxing sleepily, philosophically, delving into random shit I like, then make sure to click that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.